So this is the second part of the VR assignment. So in the first part, we had the environment. It looked like this. So you were asked to create a virtual environment consisting of foreground, midground, backgrounds, and layers, add locomotion and teleportation to support navigation. The the locomotion part, so teleportation is relatively easy. Locomotion part, you probably have to look around a little bit. I was trying to convert one of my examples here where I have like a terrain scene and then this ball will like go down and you can throw it around. Um, and I was trying to do it with the building blocks and the teleportation area, and I haven't actually got it to work yet. Um, so the idea is that you add the nav mesh surface and then probably bake it um, into the scene, and then kind of like probably still have to link it somehow. I haven't figured out that part yet, and we don't have any other areas. So somehow I still have to make sure. So right now I can teleport to different areas, but I cannot actually just like walk or along the terrain and follow that ball. That used to be. I'm trying to port this scene from previous scene where I implemented this with XR Interaction Toolkit. All right, and so then recording it in a VR headset and then adapt the previous 3D scene for VR. So this was part one. Now we're doing part two. It's focused on interactions, object selection, and manipulation. We use Meta All-in-One, Meta XR All-in-One SDK, and also Lab 7 showed quite a few things in terms of interactions. So first we do object selection only. So object selection usually you give some feedback when the user selects an object. You want to be able to detect that the user has selected an object, and so you want to enable control over hand interaction, gaze, voice, as we've shown. The gaze example here for this is like a little bit ago, but this is something I showed in class, where you basically have gaze rays coming out of your eyes, the left and right eye, and the blue line here is the head gaze. And so as I turn my head towards this object, you can see how my eye gaze, independently from the head gaze, the blue line, how my eye gaze actually intersects with the cube and therefore makes it interactive. This is object selection right now, kind of like a hover effect. You could, of course, also do it with the hands, like I show here. That would be another way. So you don't have to do gaze. Hands or controllers would all work. We have various prefabs for the, not, yeah, prefabs, but like building blocks for that. All right, and then we're gonna go to manipulation next. So selection is you give feedback, but you don't actually really manipulate the object. When you give feedback, you may change the appearance, the translation, whatnot, scale, some kind of animation, like we did color animation in the lab. When it's hovered and when it's clicked, we animated the colors to a different thing. You can use the scripts to give that kind of like feedback. Just make it work for your own scene, and perhaps also spend some time understanding the scripts that Anurag wrote for us. And we'll expand on the scripts next week as well. Then manipulation, really you want to give the user the chance, direct manipulation, so the chance to interact with objects and move them around, rotate, scale, typical things. This can be done with various prefabs, doesn't require scripting. You can do proxy interactions like from week 3. For example, a light switch here to turn on or off a light bulb, so you interact with one object to control another. This would require lightweight scripting. You should be able to do this relatively easily at this point. And then you could write a script to spawn new objects on controller button press, for example, or when certain hand gestures are performed by the user. So it's always a good idea to look at the interaction SDK samples. So there's actually quite a few in there. So here you have gestures, for example, can detect swipe left, swipe right. You have distance, grab, and things like that to control these different objects, and they all have different behaviors. So supporting both near and far interaction is, for example, interesting. Here I have like a torchlight, and when you grab this object, it actually puts the hand position down here at the handle. Could inspect that a little bit, like how that's done, and create some pretty advanced interactions that way. You want to run and deploy and record, similar to part one. And then the fourth task, the last one, is implement a complex VR interaction. going beyond building blocks. So use scripting, in this case, complexity. Can be demonstrated by creating, for example, one interaction that consists of multiple steps, so some sequence, or by creating multiple interactions in particular. Well, actually, multiple steps, one interaction, like ABC, or you're creating multiple interactions that are like puzzle pieces style, and then you they have to be done in a particular sequence, or all of them have to be done in no particular sequence, but they have to be done. Then something else happens, so can implement something like that. You can support multimodal interaction involving gesture and speech, or gesture and gaze. And here are some ideas. So, for example, we all brainstormed around the VR interactions for the final project. So take the most complex interaction that you think you could implement and give it a try. You could try to replicate any egocentric or exocentric interaction techniques. So I covered those in the slides. I didn't spend too much time actually really going over them. So egocentric means users can directly interact with objects to change, and exo users interact with objects via scaled representations. So this is a typical egocentric, like a virtual hand here. You're grabbing an object and it's directly corresponds to your hand movement, and you can drop it and it has physics. There are different ways to do distance. So here's homer, which is funny. So instead of the object coming towards you, the controller actually snaps to the object. You control it at a distance. There is a distance grab in the Meta SDK that supports this, and so could play with that. There's a scaled grab. This is still kind of like, I would say this is more well, this is exocentric, and then we have, so the object flies towards you, it takes it out of the perspective, flies towards you. World in miniature is kind of fun. So you actually have like a replica of the world in miniature, and then when you move the little bench, it actually controls the big bench. And when you move this little wardrobe, it moves the entire wardrobe, and it corresponds 1-to-1 to the scale of this scene. And this is the upscale version. It has physics, reacts exactly the same way. Could be interesting to implement something like that. And I also have some ideas, like some more
With
advanced
room-scale
ideas. So for
tracking
example,
and wireless
navigation, and that's
headsets,
hard, like in a world
users
like
can
this.
ground-level
You
scale
could just upscale yourself, be like a giant for a while.
that's been
So
raised
playing
up
with
to level scaling
scale and
allows users
perspective
to
is
walk
kind
through
of
a
fun.
miniature
So then
world that's been raised up to maintain their eye level.
scale up, you can travel
With
the
7
world
link boots, every step the
faster.
user takes appears longer, and found that when embodied as a
And so you
giant
could
and
like
took
see
bigger
the
steps
world
when
from
walking.
like this. There's also various ideas here in
This user has
space-time,
finished their design and wants to show it off to
So they
their
have one idea
collaborator.
which is called parallel
However,
avatars.
they are
So here's
deep in their building
avatar
process.
that's currently
Grabbing them
like
would break
occupied
their
by another
workflow
person.
and is quite risky in
And
VR,
so
as it
if
would
you wanted
suddenly
this
change
person
their
to
view
work on a
and
different
potentially cause
aspect of
motion
the scene,
sickness.
you
In
would need to
space-time,
coordinate with them.
avatars
So
are
what
objects
you
that
could
are
do is
permanently
grab
owned by
a
their hosts.
copy of
Instead
this
of
avatar,
directly
which is,
manipulating
again,
them, a
impersonated
user can
by
pull off a
another
parallel
person
avatar
in
object
VR.
of their collaborator and
and
position,
then you
rotate,
could
and scale
basically
it
direct
to
their
create a
attention
future viewpoint.
to the
The
area
collaborator
where you want
receives
them to
subtle
interact,
vibration
and then
feedback
for the
during this
user,
process and can
it'll
easily
kind
move
of
to
like
the newly
show them,
proposed location
there's a
once
new
they've finished
location
their
for
task.
them to work on.
During a
So this
conversation,
idea
if
of
one of the users
grabbing
wants
an
to
avatar
teleport to the place that they are
around is
discussing,
kind of like
they
also
can,
interesting
but they will suddenly disappear
exocentric,
from the other user's
interaction
perspectives.
technique. Lots of other examples in the Meta SDK that can inspire you.
And
Push
here we have a
buttons,
button
scroll,
that
widgets,
glows, right?
all kinds of
Up.
object selection and manipulation. Here, for example,
I wanna,
a
like,
gesture on the
expand
hand, a
elevation.
hand menu on
And
the
it's funny because I'm using
directly
my
on the
own
palm, and you're
hand
touching the
as a
palm
touch
to interact
surface.
with it. This is I showed an image of this
I wanted
area,
to
but
show you
this
this
is basically
example,
you can
so
grab the
it's
key, and
hooking,
depending on how you touch
and
it,
it snaps it to
it'll
my
snap
fingers,
to
and
your
I'm actually
index
adjusting.
and thumb, and
It doesn't adjust anything.
then
Here I'm using my hand, and it becomes
here,
done.
the
And palm
torchlight,
grab, and this one
there you go, there's
does
the mug.
both. So
think
if
you
I
can
use
do
my
either grab the whole thing
my
or
palm,
just grab
it
the
does
handle
this.
with a pinch
And if I
gesture,
use a pinch
and then you have
grab,
the handle on
it
kind
actually
of like
puts it
that.
on my fingers. And
So this is something you could
snaps
also
and
spend a little bit of
oops.
time on. I would
put it
consider
back.
this a more complex interaction.
So these are the
even though
hand
it
grab
can
poses,
probably
or
done
is done via
at
like
least with some
proxies.
building block
Basically,
initially.
different positions are
But
predefined.
hand
Here
grab
like this.
use is an interesting example as well. So here, I showed this in
All right,
class.
and spray.
You can spray, and then you can
I grab
change
this
the
here,
spray functionality
and it pushes the
by
proxy.
changing
The
going to
proxy
the
that
tip,
tells the
like going
object
to this
where
area
the hand
again,
is
to
do
actually
like
show
this,
it.
this way.
Yeah, and then
You
you
can
actually
adjust the
change the nozzle,
maybe
and then it'll change
I mean,
the
we can
behavior of the
see
spray bottle.
normally it writes
Lots of cool things.
like that.
I'll show other things here regarding menu designs that I didn't show before. But yeah, we're entering the final version, the final part of the course soon. So this last exercise is this last task is designed to push you a little bit, and you should provide a good rationale for how you did it, what challenges you had, what compromises you had to make, etc. in your diary. All right, good luck.